Today we're going to show you how to sharpen one of our standard right hand crook knives. We've got a variety of different materials here that we use for making a very simple sharpening setup, and we're going to go through the procedure of sharpening a crook knife. Okay, so the method that I like to use for sharpening my crook knives is I actually like to use wet and dry sandpaper. This is a P600 grit, so quite a fine grit itself. And how I use it is I actually make these very simple sharpening sticks. So they're made out of scrap material. This is a piece of oak with two very nice flat surfaces that are going to be used for sharpening the outside bevel. And then all I do is I actually radius these edges here so that they've got a nice curve that's going to match the tool that I'm actually going to be sharpening. What I normally do is cut the sandpaper up into strips. I think I normally use about a 3-inch wide strip for this particular size of push stick, and the best method I've found of attaching that sandpaper to this is to actually use spray mount. I used to use contact adhesive and Pritt stick and things like that, but I found consistent results with the spray mount. All we need to do is cut our strips of sandpaper, spray a good covering of spray mount onto our sandpaper and let it dry for about 30-40 seconds until it's well tacky. Then what we can do is very carefully stick our sandpaper onto our push stick, making sure that the join is on the back side of the flat surface. You don't want the join on the radiused edge. Once you've done that, you should end up with something like this. This is one that I've been using for 3 or 4 weeks now, so it's a little bit glazed, but still works just the same. The other thing that we'll be needing to make is exactly the same push stick setup, but instead of sandpaper being stuck on there, we actually use soft, thin leather. This is pigskin lining material that we use for the leather work, and we stick it to the board exactly the same way. Can use spray mount. Contact adhesive is actually slightly better for this, but when you stick it down, make sure that you stick it with the fluffy side uppermost. We also make a slightly larger version for the straight knives or for doing the outside bevel, but to be honest, you can get away with just that. What we do is we actually charge the surface of the leather with some honing paste. This is Tormek honing paste. I find this works really good, and that's going to give a really good fine mirror finish. The only other thing that I tend to use just to help me find the bevels, and you'll certainly find it easier at home, just to make sure that you get a good edge geometry going, is to use the old magic marker, the Sharpie, and we can use that for colouring in those bevel surfaces. Okay? So what we'll do now is we'll take you through that procedure. Okay, as I said, we're going to sharpen the standard right hand crook knife. It's not a bad one to show you because it's actually got slightly tighter curves, so I can show you how I get around that slight problem. I think the first thing I'll suggest that you do, just to make sure that you get the right angle on that bevel, and just to sort of train the old muscle memory a little bit, it's far easier for us to actually colour that bevel in. So with your marker pen, I'm just going to colour that bevel in, not the whole blade, just the bevel itself, all the way around. And if you really want to, you can even do the inside surface as well. Okay, so we've got our bevels coloured in now. So what I'm going to do first is I always tend to flatten off the inside face of my hook knife. If you're using it in normal circumstances, if you do hit any little knots or put any divots in your blade, you tend to push the cutting edge, the burr, over onto the inside face. So we'll spend a little bit of time flattening that. I find that it actually helps if you sit yourself down on a workbench. We're using the anvil in this instance, but I've also found that it actually helps if you lift the tool slightly with a block of wood, and it just allows you to come from behind the cutting edge using that radius side of the push stick. So we're going to get ourselves positioned quite comfortably, and then pushing away from the cutting edge, we're just going to gently polish that inside face. Now I'm keeping an eye on that marker pen, and I'm making sure that I'm removing a nice even flat section, and as soon as I get rid of that last little bit of black pen on the very edge of the hook knife, you know that you've achieved true flatness and you've polished the whole of that surface. If you find that it's awkward just to get around that last little bit of sweep there, just rock your tool over slightly, and then you can just twist the push stick and just polish that last little section. Okay, so we've done that inside surface. The next task now is to polish the outside bevel. Now, because this is dead flat, even though it's round a curve, we can now use the flat side of our push stick. I tend to find it easier now to actually draw the push stick away from the cutting edge. So I'm going to be having the cutting edge towards me, and I'm ensuring that I'm resting the hook of the tool on my little block, and I'm going to keep an eye on that pen, and I'm just going to drag the stick along that bevel, keeping it nice and flat, concentrating on one little area to start with, ensuring that I'm trying to remove that pen completely. If I see that I'm removing the pen only from the back side of the bevel, that tells me that I'm leaning too far back off the bevel, and the opposite way around, if I'm removing pen just from the very tip, it means that I'm actually starting to round that bevel over. So the pen is a really good indicator that you're ensuring that you're keeping that bevel nice and flat.